If you're thinking about querying an agent for your book, there's something you absolutely must understand because most authors are walking straight into a brick wall without even knowing it. My name is Tim Grawl. I'm the CEO of StoryGrid, and I've been in the publishing industry for over 15 years. I've worked as a publicist, book marketing consultant, and now run a small publishing house with my partner, Sean Coyne. And Sean Coyne has been an editor and writer for over 30 years, spending decades as both an acquiring editor at the major publishing houses and an agent successfully selling big best-selling books into traditional publishing houses. I've also known and been friends with many agents, worked closely with them, spent a lot of time at bars drinking with them, and a couple agents I've known have sold books that have become big New York Times bestsellers on both the fiction and nonfiction side. So when I talk to authors about querying or see them posting on Twitter about this, I realized pretty quickly that most of them are doomed from the very beginning. Now, this isn't necessarily because of their book or their proposal or anything like that. Of course, I don't know what their writing is just by what they're posting online and looking in from the outside. The biggest problem is that they're focusing on themselves and their book project, and they're making every decision from that point of view. And so let's fix that and figure out how you can actually approach an agent and get them interested in you, and then talk about what you get as a result if you do ever get signed with an agent as well. Okay, so let's imagine you're an agent. There's only three ways that you can make money. The first is you sell the book for an advance. So you get an advance on royalties. So if you don't know what a book advance is, an advance against royalties, basically the publisher gives you some money and you get to keep that money. You never have to pay it back, but you don't make any other money off your book until the royalties that you make off the book surpass the advance. So if you're given, $20,000 as an advance, you'll never make any more money off your book unless the royalties you earn off of it surpass $20,000. And then if you do, you'll start making the royalties. Okay. So that's the first way as an agent you're making money is you sell the book for the advance. The second way is off the royalties that the book makes. And then the third way is off of subright sales. So this might be audiobook, foreign, film and TV, and not all agents take on all of those rights or anything like that. But that's basically the three different ways that an agent can make money. And the number that they're making is 15% pretty much across the board. When you get into things like film and TV rights, it can adjust a little bit. But in the publishing industry, for selling the book for an advance and royalties and sub rights, it's usually 15% that the agent is making off of your book. So that's what they're looking at. That's how they're going to make a living is they're going to take 15% of all the money before it gets to you. So again, if you get a $10,000 advance, they're going to take $1,500 of that, and you're going to keep 85%, which would be $8,500. So if I'm an agent, I definitely want to find great books that I can sell into the publishing houses and get those big advances, and that will go on to earn out those advances and continue to bring in royalties because I make 15% on those royalties as well. So looking at that 15%, you kind of have two ways to go about this. I can sell a lot of deals that are smaller and make my 15% and it adds up that way, or I can go after really big deals and make my 15% off of those. And really, most agents are balancing both of those at any given time. Even really big agents that have big time authors that get big advances, they're always keeping some authors that are smaller, that are newer, that they're trying to bring up as well. And I'll talk more about that in a second. But that's really all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to find great books that I think I can sell into the publishing houses so I can get my 15% on the advance and on the royalties from the sale. And this is an important part because you have to remember that agents are incentivized to find these great books that they can sell into publishing houses. I think there's this idea that these agents are like sitting up in their offices, smoking cigars, sitting on their stacks of royalty money they've taken from their authors, and they're looking down on these poor sods sending in their queries, almost as if like there's like a mail slot on the door and these poor authors are sliding their books through it and it's just going straight into the shredder. And that's not true. That's not how this works because agents are looking for great books too. Now, most agents are getting way more queries than they can ever actually follow through on and represent, but they're still trying to find the ones that they think they can sell and make some money on. That's how they make money. They make zero money until something sells, and then they get the advance or royalties or sub rights. So everything they do up until that is just on spec. Now, I will say here that most agents do have their own taste and they're trying to build up their own brand in the industry. So they're not just looking at literally anything that might sell. Some of them are, but most of them have like a specific niche they're going for, and they are trying to build up something they're known for. But again, it still applies that they're trying to make money. They're trying to run a successful business. So they're looking for books that they can sell. Okay, so now let's try to get into some of the nitty gritty because this is really the parts I think most authors understand vaguely. Like, yes, the agents make 15%. That's how they make money. Why wouldn't they want to represent my amazing book, right? Here's the rub. The average advance for a first-time unknown fiction writer is, drumroll please, $5,000 to $10,000. It's pretty rare for a author that doesn't have a big platform, that isn't well known some way, and it's their first book to get anything north of $10,000. So now let's do a little math here. 15% of $5,000 is $750. 15% of $10,000 is $1,500. So for a first-time author, new author, the most an agent is hoping to make off of selling the book is somewhere between $750 and $1,500. And for you to earn out that $5,000 advance and then them to start making royalties on that money, you have to sell somewhere in the ballpark of about 3,500 copies of your book. And they know the truth. The agents all know that most books sell about 250 copies in the first year that they're out. So the agent knows that that $750 to $1,500 from the advance is probably all they're ever going to make off of working with you on this book. So think about this. They have to put all of the time and effort of talking to you on the phone, contracts, writing up the proposal, working with you through that process, sending out the pitches, following up on the pitches, contract negotiation, all of that for somewhere between $750 and $1,500. So if they spend more than 15 to 30 hours on your project, even if it sells, which most don't, they're looking at less than $50 an hour, and you've got to make $50 an hour, 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year in order to make just $100,000. And so if they start cracking into 30, 40, 50 hours on your project, the odds of them ever getting paid well for that time goes way down. But also remember, most projects don't sell. So let's say 1 out of 3 of their projects tend to sell. That's probably a little high, but let's just be optimistic here. 1 out of 3 sell. And so what they need to do is take that 15 to 30 hours on your project and spread it out over 3 projects because those other 2, they're not even really going to ever get paid for because they're never going to sell. And so they need to spend no more than 5 to 10 hours on any given project to hope to even make just $50 an hour. Now, of course, great agents aren't just betting on one book. They're looking for career authors that can represent them long term, but they also have to be realistic, is that most books sell 250 copies in the first year. And if your book comes out and you get somewhere between a $5,000 and $10,000 advance and it only sells 250, maybe 300, 500 copies, you're never going to get another book deal. And so this is their one shot to get paid, and they're only going to make about $750 to $1,500. Okay, so I know this sounds really bleak and negative, but it's important that you understand where they're coming from as agents. Again, I don't think most of the authors I talked to, and I kind of walked them through this, it's the first time they've ever actually sat down and looked at the math of how much these agents are making. The vast majority of agents, like good agents working hard, been around a long time, they're not getting rich off their clients. They're probably making a decent living, but they're not just like buying yachts and stuff right here. So you need to make sure that when you start querying, you put yourself in the agent's shoes and think from their perspective. And what this means is you need to help them see how your book will make them money, and you need to do everything you possibly can to reduce their workload. So basically, when you're querying, you shouldn't think, how can I get this agent to represent me? It's how can I make it in their best interest and do as much of their work as possible for them? That's going to raise the likelihood that they'll look at your book and consider it. And there's three specific ways you can make it easy for an agent to say yes to you. So let's go through those. The first is market fit. It needs to fit into the marketplace, preferably the marketplace that is currently selling really well in the industry. Now is not the time to point out how your book is unique, never been done before, one in a million, you've never seen anything like this. That's going to make agents run for the hills because you need to make it obvious where on the bookshelves your book will sit and what, again, preferably major best-selling books are sitting next to your book. You're basically saying, my book is like these other books that is selling really well in the marketplace right now. So you need to do that work for them because it's your book. If you don't understand this, then you're in a really negative position and you're trying to hope that they can figure this out for you. You need to tell them where in the market that your book will fit and why that's important and why that's going to sell a lot of copies. The second thing you need to do is do the publisher research for yourself. Who has published the books that yours will sit next to? So all of those books that are close to your book on the bookshelf, who published those books? And not just what publishing house, but what editor at the publishing house acquired the rights to those books? Why would that editor at that publishing house be interested in your book? So if you can come to an agent and say, Sue at Penguin Random House has bought 3 books in the last 2 years that are just like my book, and those books have gone on to sell 50,000 copies and sell really well in the marketplace, now you're going to get an agent's attention, not just because you're thinking the way they're thinking and helping them with the work, but they understand now that you understand how the publishing industry actually works, and it's going to make you look really good to them. So that's the first two things, market fit and publisher research. And the third is platform. Now, I know, as a guy that was a book marketing consultant for over a decade, I have put dozens of books on the New York Times or Wall Street Journal bestseller list. I have helped lots of indie authors get their platform up and running. I know marketing really well, and I need you to understand something. I agree that it is ridiculous that you have to both learn how to be a world-class writer and be a world-class marketer in order to be an author. That doesn't make any sense, and I agree with you. Now, let me pause here because you do have to be a world-class writer to get a publishing deal, to get an agent, to get readers to read your book and tell their friends about it. And if you're interested in making sure that your book is like this, I want to give you a free tool we have here at StoryGrid that helps writers figure out if their scenes are working, if their writing is working in their book. It's a 13-point scene writing checklist. You can download it right now at storygrid.com/checklist. This is the exact checklist we use here at StoryGrid with our students to make sure that our students' writing is working and it's getting better. So not only do you get the checklist, I'm going to walk you through how we use it at StoryGrid to help our students level up their writing and how you can use it with your own writing. It's a completely free tool. You can go to storygrid.com/checklist to download it right now. Back to your platform. So again, I think it's ridiculous that you have to be a world-class writer and a world-class marketer in order to get a really good book deal. It's like telling somebody in order to be a really good writer, you also have to learn plumbing. It doesn't make any sense. They don't go together. And yet, that is the state of the industry. If you have a platform where you have an audience, you're going to look so much better to an agent because when they go to sell your book to a publishing house, and remember, publishing houses are businesses, they have to make money. And the way they make money is when your book sells. So if you have a platform and you've thought through it, you can go to the agent and say, this is how I'm going to sell a lot of copies of my book. My book's not going to be one of those that only sells 250 copies because of these things. So first of all, you have to be developing a platform in some way, a website, social media, building an email list. I have other videos on this channel talking about that. But you have to be doing that, and you have to know how to present that in a way where you can say, hey, I've done these things, and that's going to help me sell my book when it comes out. Okay. So when you are thinking about querying an agent, you've got to put yourself into their shoes, and you've got to do as much of their work for them to show that your book can make them and the publishing house's money. And you do that by figuring out your market fit, the publisher research, and building a platform. And all of this begs a question. Why are you doing this anyway? What are you hoping to get out of getting a traditional publishing deal? Because obviously getting an agent is not the point. That's just the first step towards getting what you actually want, which is a publishing deal. So what are you hoping to get out of this publishing deal? Are you hoping to get marketing support where they go out and promote the book and do the publicist thing and do the marketing thing and help you sell a bunch of copies of your book? This is what I assumed when I was new to the publishing industry is like, hey, the incentives are aligned. The more of my book that sells, the more the publishing house makes money. So they're going to go and market the books as much as they possibly can. Unfortunately, publishing houses don't spend their time, effort, and money and resources on books unless they've given them really big advances. And when I say really big advances, I'm talking minimum 500,000. Really, it's $1 million or more. Because again, think about it like a business. If they give an author $1 million advance, they are really incentivized to get all of that money back and then make a profit. And so they're going to put all of their time, effort, and resources into those books. And when I say all, I mean literally 99.99% of their time, money, and effort are going towards those books that get really big advances. All the other books, especially the books like yours that got the $5,000 to $10,000 advance, they're going to get thrown into a bowl with a bunch of other books, and they're going to be tossed against the wall like spaghetti, and they're just going to hope a couple of those stick and start making money. Everything else that falls to the floor, they're just going to move on. Okay. This is what happens. I've seen it happen over and over and over where authors get a publishing deal. They're so excited. The book comes out and they literally can't even get their editor on the phone within a couple weeks. This isn't always the case, but this is often the case because your editor has moved on to the next $5,000 advance book that they've got to churn and get out into the world as fast as possible because they're just tossing them against the wall, hoping that eventually one of them sticks. And by sticks, it means starts selling. And that means you are doing the selling because the marketing is on you. So if you are not an author that's going to get a 500,000 or $1 million or more advance, you have to understand the marketing is on you. 100% of the marketing of actually getting people to buy the book is going to be on you. So you just have to know that going in. If you're okay with that, that's totally fine. But just understand if you're assuming your publisher is going to do that, they're not going to do that for you. So the first thing authors often assume they're going to get from their publishing deal is marketing support. The second would be distribution. And technically, your book will be available for any bookstore to order and carry and sell. But remember, all these bookstores, they have limited shelf space that is going to be given to the books they know they can sell. And what that looks like is they're going to sell backlist bestsellers. So think about every bookstore you walk in probably is selling a copy of Lord of the Rings. And so they're going to use backlist bestsellers or new books from established brand name authors. So this is why every time you walk into a bookstore, the new Stephen King book is sitting there, right? He gets that shelf space because they know his name on the book is what's going to sell the book. It doesn't really matter what the title is. So the odds of your book at the $5,000 to $10,000 advance range getting stocked in bookstores as a debut unknown author is somewhere extremely close to zero. Most of the time, the only store that's going to carry your book is your local bookstore because you went into that local bookstore and said, "Hey, I'm a local author. Will you, carry my book? I might do an event here. I might send some people here to buy it." And so they're going to order 2 or 3 copies of your book and like stick them in a shelf somewhere and probably immediately send them back within a month if they don't sell. So again, your book will be available to libraries and bookstores and these kinds of things, but the odds of them actually carrying the book are somewhere close to zero. The other thing they're going to do for you is the distribution of your ebook. So your ebook will be for sale everywhere, Amazon, Apple, all the different places that you can buy ebooks. They will take care of that for you as well and distribute that out to all the online venues where people can buy ebooks, even though the vast, 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 vast majority of them are sold on Amazon. Okay, so we've talked about your traditional publishing isn't really going to help you with marketing at all. Distribution isn't really going to have an impact on sales. And so the other thing they do is the packaging, right? So they're going to do a book design, a book cover design, and put a book cover on it. And they're going to do editing of the interior. But for both of those things, the odds are they're going to hire contractors, outside contractors to do that, especially the book design. Most of the time, the cover design is not done by somebody in-house. A lot of the publishing houses don't even have in-house design teams anymore. They have a stable of contractors that they hire to do covers. And so they will put a cover on it, they'll do an edit of it, and then they're gonna ship it out into the world and make sure there's like the cover looks decent and it's proofread and there's no typos or grammatical errors. Now, sometimes they slip through the cracks. You see horror stories of like books going out into the world from traditional publishing and they look terrible. That's actually really rare. They do a pretty good job of getting the cover on it, getting it proofread, getting it formatted, and so the packaging does work. So again, I want to back up here and ask this question. Why are you doing this? Why are you going through all of this pain and effort to get an agent to hope that they can eventually sell it into traditional publishing so that you can get this advance and then you still got to do the marketing. Distribution doesn't really help well. They're going to put a cover on it and make sure it's edited, all of that. So why are you doing this? And I'm going to go into this a little bit more, but I just want to ask you a question. I want you to be honest with yourself. Is it just for the ego boost of being picked, of being able to post on Twitter and tell your writing group and family that you're getting published, or maybe perhaps seeing your book on the bookshelf in your home store where you finally convince them to carry it? Because I'll tell you, all of those things fade really, really fast. I've worked with so many authors that their book has hit the New York Times bestseller list. That fades just about as quickly. Literally, like the next week, I've talked to authors, and most of them are kind of like, "Oh yeah, yeah, that's cool. I'm just working on my next book now, right?" So I will say this: getting a traditional publishing deal, it can make a few things a little easier. So one is you're more likely to be able to get an award for your book. So like a Pulitzer Prize is going to a traditionally published book, not an indie book. But again, what are the odds of you getting the Pulitzer Prize or a National Book Award, right? So awards are there, but remember, awards rarely affect book sales. You could look at, say, well, it's easier to get media if I get traditionally published and I can maybe get my book reviewed in something like Publishers Weekly or the New York Times. But again, those don't move book sales. We've actually tracked this. Getting reviewed, actually, even hitting the New York Times bestseller list does not affect your book sales. It's crazy, but it doesn't. So then there's other things like it's a little easier to get foreign rights deals because publishers have established foreign rights teams to sell your novel internationally. But unless your book is selling a lot, that's not actually going to happen anyway. And you notice even these things, awards, media, it's more about the ego of it than whether it actually sells books. So this is why I want you to be honest with yourself when you're coming out with a book. So forget traditional publishing, forget how it's getting out into the marketplace. You just putting a book out. What's your goal? Is it prestige and ego? If it is, that's fine. I just want you to understand that's why you're doing it. If it's just the prestige of it, that's fine. But if it's book sales and readers and making any kind of a living on your book, I don't know if this is the best way to go about it, is getting a traditional book deal and querying an agent. because at the point that you sign that dotted line, your book is no longer yours. Yes, you still own the copyright, but you can't distribute it in book form anywhere in the world. That is owned by the publishing house now. And you can't do whatever you want with your book once you've sold it. And remember, you sold it for 85% of $5,000, and that $5,000 is paid out over a year at least. And again, the only copies that are going to sell are the ones that you're promoting and marketing and selling yourself. So, this is why I think the vast majority of first time fiction authors should be self publishing. Because usually, for less than $5,000, you can get almost the exact same quality of book with the same distribution. You can even just hire the same contractors that your publisher was going to hire to do your book cover and editing anyway. I've actually done this. A lot of times inside the book, the cover designer is listed on the title page or the acknowledgement, and I just Google that cover designer and hire that person to do a book cover design. It's that simple, and you're literally getting the exact same contractor that big publishers are hiring to do book covers. And again, you can usually do this for less than $5,000. You can definitely do it for less than $10,000. And remember, at this point, you retain all of the control of the book and you can make way more royalties. So to earn that $5,000 advance, remember, to earn out that advance, you've got to sell somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,500 copies of your book through traditional publishing. For you to take home $5,000 when you're selling it direct yourself, self-publishing, you're looking at more like about 700 copies on your own. So now you can also market it however you want. And one of the best ways to market your book is to give them away to people to read it. And that is the one thing you're not allowed to do when you have a traditional publisher. They're not going to let you give away copies of your book. Here's the part I really want you to hear me on when I'm talking about self-publishing. If you self-publish and you work hard, you do all the same marketing, you put your back into it and you push on it and you make those sales come in just like you would if you were traditionally published. But if you do it self-published and your book starts becoming successful and you start selling books, guess who is going to become really, really interested in helping you sell your book to a traditional publisher? That's right. All of those agents that won't return your query letters right now because you're showing them that you can sell the book. A good agent friend of mine, this is literally how he built his very successful agent practice, is he watches self-publishing to see which books are starting to take off. He goes to that author, signs them, and goes and sells that book that's already done to traditional publishers. So you self-publishing, there's this myth that self-publishing reduces the odds of you being able to get a traditional publishing deal. It only does that if your book doesn't sell. But think about it, it still wouldn't sell with traditional publishing, which would mean you've got the one publishing deal and then that's it. You're never going to make any more money on it. They own the book and they're not going to want to buy your next book. And so you are better off taking all of that time, effort, and agony of querying agents and just spending that time getting a part-time job to make the money to publish the book on your own, because you're going to make more money off the book, reach more people with the book. And if you still want a traditional publishing deal at the end of the day, which, you get to make that decision, you selling the book is going to set you up to get a traditional publishing deal. So at the end of the day, you can spend years begging for a chance, querying agents, or a few months building your own career and that you own and that you have all the power in. This is the choice that you're making. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I made this video because I've been around for a long time and I just keep seeing people that don't understand what it means to query an agent, what's actually involved in it, and then what you actually get on the back end. Because this is not the stuff that people post on Twitter after their book has come out from a traditional publisher and it's not selling and they never get another contract. They're not posting that on Twitter. You only saw the ones where they're all excited they got the publishing deal. So I just want you to know the truth of how this actually works. And again, I come back to, for any of this to work, whether you're self-published or traditionally published, you have to know how to write a great book. And that's what we do here at StoryGrid, is to help you level up your skills so you can write a book that when readers start reading it, they can't stop. They stay up late turning pages. So again, To get that 13-point checklist, you can go to storygrid.com/checklist. We also run 6-week scene writing workshops that are life-changing for the people in the workshops. They make more progress in their writing with 6 weeks with us than 6 years of doing it on their own. I'd love for you to join us for the next one. You can go find out more at storygrid.com/workshop. Now, if you do want to know the number one thing that you can do to market your book, no matter what you're doing or who you are, that's going to help your book get out into the world, I have a video all about that right now. It's on your screen. You should click that and watch it next. But either way, thanks so much for being a writer. Thanks for being a part of our community here at StoryGrid. I'll see you next time.